Hey guys, welcome back to Elevate a Soul. So today we are continuing with the part 3. On the other hand, Bharata simply smiled and replied to his abuser, "My dear king, whatever you have sarcastically said is certainly true. It is a fact that I have not labored hand because the body is the carrier of the palanquin and not I, who am detached. You said that I am not stout and strong, and such words are certainly befitting someone who does not know the distinction between the body and the soul. The body may be fat or thin, but no learned man would say such a thing about the spirit soul. Therefore, you were unknowingly correct when you said that I am not very stout. If this journey related to me at all, I would certainly be experiencing some trouble, but because it is only my body that is engaged in work, whereas I have nothing at all to do with it, there is no trouble at all for me. Bodily and mental distresses, hunger, thirst, fear, desires for material happiness, old age, sleep, attachment for material possessions, anger, lamentation and illusion are all transformations of the bodily coverings. Therefore, one who is absorbed in the bodily concept of life is certainly affected by these conditions. On the other hand, I am free from the bodily conception of life, and thus I have not become affected by carrying the palanquin or hearing your words of chastisement. My dear king, you think that you are the master, and because of this, you are trying to order me. But I must inform you that this attitude is incorrect, because all such positions are temporary. Today you may be the king and I the servant, but tomorrow our positions may be reversed. Actually, everyone is being forced to act in accordance with the laws of material nature, and so I consider everyone to be a servant. My dear king, you have called me a rascal and a dull, crazy fellow. However, I beg to inform you that in spite of my living like a madman, I am actually a self-realized soul. What would you gain by punishing me? Even if you were correct and I am truly a madman, your punishment would have no effect, like the beating of a dead horse. When a madman is punished, his madness is not cured. Out of humility, Bharata never considered himself to be a great devotee. Like an ordinary man, he thought that by carrying the king's palanquin, he was destroying the reactions of his past misdeeds. Thus, without being at all agitated, Bharata had properly replied to the king and then prepared to continue carrying the palanquin as before. King Rahugana had great faith in discussions about the absolute truth, and by hearing Bharata's philosophical presentation, which slackened the knot of ahankara within his heart, his material conception of being a king was destroyed. After quickly descending from his palanquin, King Rahugana fell flat onto the ground and touched his head to the lotus feet of Bharata, so that he might become excused for having insulted a Brahmana. With great humility and repentance, he said, "O Brahmana, you move within this world covered and unknown to others. Who are you? Are you a learned Brahmana and saintly person, or are you one of those exalted liberated souls such as Dattatreya? Why have you come to this place? Is it just to do good for us?" My dear sir, I am not at all afraid of Indra's thunderbolt, the trident of Lord Shiva, or even the punishment of Yamaraja, but I am very afraid of having offended a Brahmana. It appears that you generally keep the influence of your great spiritual knowledge hidden. Why are you wandering about like a dullard? O great saintly person, what you have spoken is certainly correct, But because persons like myself cannot easily grasp transcendental topics, kindly explain what you have said more clearly. I consider that you have descended onto this earth as the direct representative of Kapila-deva for the benefit of all human society. O spiritual master, please describe to me what is the most secure shelter in this world. I think that you are presenting yourself as a deaf and dumb person just to examine everyone to see who is actually a human being and who is not. Because I am very attached to worldly life, I have become blind to spiritual knowledge. Still, I am now present before you, begging for enlightenment, and so please tell me how I can advance on the spiritual path. King Rahugana then expressed his doubts by saying, "You have said that you did not become fatigued by laboring, and yet, even though the soul is undoubtedly distinct from the body, it appears to feel pleasure and pain and become fatigued by bodily labor. If a pot of milk and rice is put onto the fire, the milk and rice will become hot after the pot becomes heated. In the same way, the material conditions that are experienced by the body are also seen to affect the mind and soul. For this reason, the soul cannot be completely detached from material conditions. That is my conjecture. Although the phenomenal world is not factual, its influence certainly has a great effect upon the conditioned soul. For this reason, even though material activities are impermanent, they cannot be said to be untrue. You have said that the relationship between the master and servant is not factual, being temporary. However, when a person takes the position of a king, it is his duty to rule the citizens and punish those who are disobedient. By such punishment, the king teaches the citizens to obey the laws of the state and the Vedic injunctions. You have said that there is no use in punishing one who is mad or dull-headed. However, since one becomes purified of past sinful reactions by engaging in his occupational duties, even if one is engaged by force, he will benefit. O friend of the distress, due to being falsely puffed up because of possessing the body of a king, I have committed a great offense by insulting you. Therefore, I pray that you kindly glance upon me with your causeless mercy, so that I may become relieved from the resultant sinful reaction. Since you are free from the bodily conception of life and view all persons equally, I know that there is no loss or gain for you due to my insult. On the other hand, since I have offended you, even though I may be as powerful as Lord Shiva, I shall certainly be vanquished without delay if you do not excuse me." Jada had only given preliminary spiritual knowledge, which involves the negation of the material concept of life, neti, by declaring it to be false. Therefore, in a sense, King Rahugana's arguments represent the Vaishnava philosophy, which opposes such a Mayavada or impersonal conception. Still, even though King Rahugana's arguments were correct from the practical point of view, they arose from his attachment to the bodily conception of life. As long as one identifies with the body, he feels material pleasure and pain, just as the owner of an automobile feels the stress when it is damaged. However, since such feelings are due to excessive attachment, they can be avoided when the attachment is withdrawn. Jada replied, "My dear king, although you are not very experienced, you are trying to speak like a great authority. One who possesses real knowledge never speaks as you have done, and for this reason you cannot be accepted as a genuinely learned man. Talks about the relationship between the master and servant and so forth are all within the scope of material activities. for persons who are interested in such subjects and thus perform material sacrifices, spiritual advancement definitely does not become manifest. Just as a dream comes to be automatically known as false and immaterial, the material happiness enjoyed in this life or in the next is eventually understood to be insignificant. When one realizes this, the Vedas, although an excellent source for material guidance, become insufficient to give one direct knowledge of transcendence. As long as one's mind is contaminated by the three modes of material nature, it remains exactly like an independent, uncontrolled elephant. By utilizing the senses, the uncontrolled mind expands its jurisdiction of pious and impious activities and thus becomes subjected to lust, anger, and greed while fulfilling its desires for sense enjoyment. In this way, the mind carries the living entity to various grades of bodies among the demigods, humans, and lower species. Learned persons say that bodily appearance, bondage, and liberation are all caused by the mind. When the mind is absorbed in sense gratification, it brings about conditional life and its concomitant sufferings. However, when the mind becomes unattached to material enjoyment, it is the cause of liberation. When a flame burns the wick improperly, a lamp becomes blackened, and when it is burning properly, there is bright illumination. Similarly, when the mind is detached from material sense gratification, it brings about the original brightness of Krishna consciousness. When one is bereft of Krishna consciousness, the external energy creates many ideas about activities in the mind, and these have been accumulating since time immemorial. Sometimes these impressions become manifest during the waking state and sometimes while dreaming. A liberated person can understand very clearly how this is happening. The soul's designation, the mind, is the cause of all tribulations within the material world. Because the mind is affected by disease, lamentation, illusion, attachment, greed, and enmity, it creates bondage and a false sense of intimacy in conditional life. O King, please try to conquer your mind by the weapon of devotional service unto the lotus feet of the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. King Rahugana said, O most exalted personality, by your influence, all kinds of doubts about the contradictions found in the Shastra have been removed, and thus I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. O best of Brahmanas, I am very contaminated, and my vision has been bitten by the serpent of pride. Although I am in a diseased condition of life, your nectar-like instructions are the proper medicine for alleviating my suffering. The only difficulty is that these mysterious explanations appear to be very difficult to understand, and so I request you to repeat them in a more simplified manner. Jadabharata replied, all of us on the surface of this planet are living entities in different forms, some moving and some non-moving. The different bodies and their capacities are simply transformations of earth that exist in name only, for after annihilation, they will again mingle with the earth. Some of these material combinations and permutations are called palanquin carriers, whose bodies, consisting of feet, ankles, knees, thighs, chest, and head, are simply made of earth. Upon their shoulders is the wooden palanquin, and within is the so-called king of Savira. The body of the king is just another transformation of earth, but within that body you are falsely thinking that you are the king. Actually, The innocent persons carrying your palanquin without payment are suffering because of this injustice. And yet, although you have proved yourself to be very cruel and heartless by forcing them to carry your palanquin due to false prestige, you think that you are protecting the citizens. The king should act as a representative of God and thus guide the citizens towards the spiritual path. However, when the king thinks that he can utilize the citizens for his sense gratification, just because he is the head of state, he becomes degraded. The next part will be continued in the next video. Radhe Radhe.